She vanished without a trace after a house party. He was a former NFL tight end with a history of violence and a chilling past no one wanted to talk about. Taylor Pomaski was bright, beloved, and looking for a fresh start. Instead, she became a name in a missing persons report, then a body in a shallow grave. But here's the twist. Her killer may have been unraveling long before they ever met. So the question is, did anyone try to stop him, or did they let a monster slip through the cracks? A woman screaming in the distance, blood on a wall but no body, and a man towering and silent, refusing to talk. Neighbors said the fighting was normal, but this time something was different. The music stopped. The yelling didn't. One chilling quote from the victim's friend still echoes, "Taylor told me, if anything happens to me, look at him first." This isn't just a murder. It's a timeline of ignored warning signs. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Before her name was splashed across headlines and linked forever to a chilling murder case, Taylor Pomaski was just a girl trying to find her way through life. Sometimes stumbling, often smiling, and always giving more of herself than most people deserved. Taylor Michelle Pomaski was born in 1990 and raised in the Houston, Texas area. Her loved ones describe her as someone with a spark, a magnetic personality that could light up even the darkest room. She had an infectious laugh, the kind of laugh that made other people start laughing too, even if they didn't know what was funny. People gravitated to her. She was vibrant, sharp-tongued, and surprisingly sensitive underneath it all. In high school, she was known as the girl who always rooted for the underdog. She was kind, but not naive. She was tough, but not mean. She had big dreams, but they never made her arrogant. Taylor wanted to be someone, not famous, just fulfilled. She went to college, explored different jobs, and dipped her toes into tech, events, and even fashion. She was the kind of person who didn't just adapt. She thrived in chaos, at least outwardly. But underneath her lively, outgoing exterior, there were cracks, small ones at first, the kind that only best friends and mothers notice. Taylor had a pattern, falling hard and fast for the wrong men. She gave her heart too freely, forgave too quickly, and believed, almost to a fault, that people could change. By 2020, Taylor had started to retreat from her usual social scene. Her close friends said she'd become more private, harder to reach. At first, they chalked it up to the pandemic. Everyone was isolated, right? But then, the texts slowed. She wasn't posting online like she used to. She missed birthdays. She stopped returning calls. That's when Ware Jr. entered her life. He was charming, older, confident, a former NFL player, a man with a past, but also, it seemed, a plan. Taylor was drawn in. People close to her said she lit up around him at first. She wanted it to work badly. Maybe it was the idea of stability, or the way Kevin could be incredibly attentive when he wanted to be. Maybe it was the way he made her feel like she was the only person who ever understood him. But soon, the signs started showing. He had a temper, a controlling side. She began second-guessing herself, canceling plans, hiding bruises, emotionally and possibly physically. When friends tried to ask if everything was okay, she brushed it off with a half laugh and a quick change of subject. Behind closed doors, Taylor was unraveling. According to her family, she'd confided that the relationship was volatile, passionate one day, frightening the next. Her mother recalled one conversation where Taylor said she felt like she was walking on eggshells all the time. Another friend revealed she once said, "If anything ever happens to me, look at him first." It was a haunting statement no one wanted to believe until it was too late. The irony is, Taylor tried to get out. At least twice she left Kevin. Once she even packed up and stayed with a friend for a few days. But like many abuse survivors, she went back, lured by apologies, promises, and the hope that things could go back to how they were in the beginning. In the final months before her disappearance, Taylor was quieter than ever. Friends noticed she looked thin, exhausted. She started missing work. She isolated herself completely from some people and clung tighter to others. She told one friend she was considering starting fresh in another city. She said she needed a clean break from everything. They say the silence after a scream is the loudest sound you'll ever hear. That silence started on April 25th, 2021. Taylor Pomaski was hosting a party with her boyfriend, former NFL player Ware Jr., at their home in Spring, Texas. Friends came and went. Music blared, drinks flowed, but something felt off. Tension hung in the air like smoke. People noticed the way Kevin looked at her, sharp, possessive. And then, the arguing started. Witnesses say Taylor was crying, pleading, Kevin was shouting. At some point, she ran outside, barefoot, frantic. A neighbor saw her, disheveled, terrified, and then, just like that, she was pulled back inside. That was the last time anyone ever saw her alive. The next morning, the house was quiet, too quiet. Taylor didn't show up to meet friends, she didn't answer texts. She didn't post on social media, not even a story. And Taylor always posted something. It took nearly 2 weeks before she was reported missing. 2 weeks. In that time, Kevin said little. He gave no answers, no concern. As investigators arrived at the house, they didn't find a frantic boyfriend. They found a man cool, detached, and a home that felt sterilized. On the surface, nothing looked wildly out of place. No blood, no signs of forced entry, but detectives quickly noticed what didn't add up. Taylor's phone, dead and untouched, sat in the house. Her dog, hungry and confused, was still inside, left behind. Her car was parked in the driveway, but her purse, ID, and personal items, gone. Her life had stopped, but no one had turned the page. Inside, investigators began noticing the little things, areas that had been recently scrubbed, carpet that appeared to have been deep cleaned, but only in certain rooms. In the bathroom, the scent of bleach hung heavy in the air, and in the trash, burned fabric, melted plastic, ash. There were rumors she'd been wearing a red hoodie that night. The trash contained scraps of red fabric, singed and blackened, almost unrecognizable. Then came the backyard. A patch of concrete, freshly poured, stood out against the rest. No tools nearby, no explanation for the sudden home improvement project. Cadaver dogs were brought in. They alerted not once, not twice, multiple times, both inside the home and in the backyard. But with no body, there was no case, not yet. Ware didn't help. He refused to speak to investigators. No statement, no cooperation. Just a hollow shrug and a history of violence, drugs, and control. Within weeks, he was arrested on unrelated charges. Guns, drugs, and probation violations. But Taylor was still missing. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. From the beginning, all eyes were on Ware Jr. In the weeks after her disappearance, Kevin never joined the search. He never posted a missing person alert. Instead, he disappeared into the background until police arrested him on unrelated charges. When they searched his home and vehicle, what they found was chilling. An AR-15 rifle, a loaded 9mm pistol, methamphetamine, cocaine, and digital scales. It wasn't just a bad week, it was a pattern spiraling out of control. Even then, Kevin said nothing about Taylor. So what was it? Jealousy, possessiveness, or something even darker? Something she never saw coming? Some believe Taylor was preparing to cut ties completely. That night, she may have told him she was done. But Ware wasn't the type to be left. And if the only way to keep control was to make sure she never walked away again, well, that possibility became more chilling the longer she stayed missing. Forensic psychologists say rage like Kevin's doesn't erupt overnight. It builds slowly, fueled by ego, by power, by fear of abandonment. And when that control is threatened, violence is no longer a possibility. It becomes the only option in the mind of a man like Kevin. So when Taylor Pomaski disappeared after that final fight, the only real question left was, how far did he go to silence her? When Kevin Ware Jr. was finally indicted for Taylor Pomaski's murder in 2022, it wasn't because he broke down and confessed in a wave of remorse. No. It was because a puzzle of broken stories, buried evidence, and one chilling jailhouse revelation finally painted a picture too horrific to ignore. There was no smoking gun, no DNA-stained weapon. What there was a pattern and a witness. A fellow inmate came forward, claiming Kevin had talked behind bars. Not just talked, boasted. According to the informant, Kevin bragged that he'd gotten away with it, that she'd never be found. He even hinted at where she was buried, details he should have had no reason to know, unless he had put her there. It sounded like the kind of jailhouse tale too wild to believe, but investigators checked, and what they found matched too many elements of the crime scene. Suddenly, a missing persons case turned into something darker. A possible murder with a body hidden, and a killer who believed he was untouchable. But the deeper they dug, the more disturbing the picture became. Because Kevin Ware Jr. wasn't just the monster in Taylor's life. Multiple women began to surface, some with stories from years earlier. Women who had dated Kevin, who described eerily familiar behavior. The charm, the control, the possessiveness, the rage. Stories of being isolated from friends, pinned down, trapped in relationships that felt like slow, psychological strangulation. And in a few cases, the women had vanished for periods of time, afraid to go to police. Some never filed reports. Others tried, but were ignored. The real twist. Police had already been to Kevin's home multiple times before Taylor disappeared. Domestic disturbance calls, complaints from neighbors, screams in the night. But every time they left, no arrests, no follow-ups, no real pressure. They had seen the red flags. They'd just walked past them. One neighbor recalled seeing Taylor in the weeks before she vanished. Bruised, withdrawn, barely speaking. She looked like a ghost, they said. Like someone who was still alive but already fading. When Taylor finally did disappear, it wasn't a sudden act of violence. It was the final page in a long, slow build-up of fear, manipulation, and silence. Kevin Ware Jr. didn't operate in darkness. He operated in plain sight, protected by reputation, ignored by a system that too often waits for a body before it acts. And here's the part that chills you long after the case is closed. What if Taylor wasn't the first? What if she wasn't the last? And what if the signs were always there, just waiting for someone to care enough to stop him? Because sometimes the monster isn't hiding in the shadows. Sometimes he's in the front yard, with a football past and a smile that hides a secret. And then, on December 10th, 2021, 8 months after Taylor's disappearance, skeletal remains were found in a remote field in northern Harris County. Bones scattered, weather-worn, unrecognizable, the kind of place someone only finds if they know where to look. DNA confirmed what her family had feared all along. It was Taylor. Whatever happened to her inside that house had ended with her discarded in the dirt like trash, left to rot under the Texas sun. The home, once filled with laughter, music, and hope, had become a silent crime scene. One soaked not in blood, but in dread. The kind of place where something terrible happened, and someone tried very, very hard to make sure no one would ever find out. But the truth has a way of bleeding through. No matter how hard you scrub, she wasn't perfect, none of us are. But she didn't deserve to be erased. And the truth is, the signs were always there, just waiting for someone to look closely enough to see them. Because her story doesn't end with a body being found. It ends with a haunting chorus of questions no one seems able or willing to answer. Her family, shattered but determined, continues to fight for truth. They want more than justice. They want accountability. Why wasn't Kevin Ware being watched more closely after years of violent behavior and multiple arrests? Why were so many domestic disturbance calls shrugged off like background noise? Why didn't anyone intervene when Taylor cried out for help? Court documents and timelines now reveal a disturbing trail of missed opportunities, warning signs ignored, reports left to collect dust, and red flags treated like routine paperwork. In a different system, with faster action, stricter enforcement, or just a single person willing to push harder, maybe Taylor would still be here. Maybe she'd be laughing at a party, not becoming the headline of a true crime documentary. Then, in May 2025, Ware pleaded guilty to murder and evidence tampering, admitting to killing Taylor Pomaski and burning her remains to cover it up. A judge sentenced him to 30 years in prison, 30 years for a brutal, calculated murder that might have been prevented. Fame couldn't save Ware, silence couldn't protect him, and for Taylor, her voice was stolen. But her story lives on, a tragic reminder of what happens when the warning signs go ignored. Rest in peace. Taylor Pomaski, till we meet again, your life mattered.